What's up, everybody? So, whatever happened to the holy cows? Are we in the end times yet or not? I guess there's two ways you can look at this. If you wait 2,000 years, then hey, what's 2001 years? But then on the other hand, every day that goes by that these cows may develop a blemish or a white hair is another day that this could all be foiled and we have to wait another 2,000 years. So you might get it while the getting's good. Nobody wants to have to reschedule the apocalypse for a little white hair. Okay, so what are we talking about here for the people that haven't heard of this? In the OT, any Hebrew that touches a deceased person is unclean for 7 days. I don't know if you've read the OT, but that means there's a lot of unclean time for people. Yahweh commanded a lot of wet work and then says, well, since you did what I told you to do, you're now unclean for 7 days. So a man who is clean is to sprinkle those who are unclean on the 3rd and 7th days. Then they have to wash themselves, wash their clothes, or they're expelled from the camp. To make this holy cleansing water, he says to tell them to bring you a red heifer without defect or blemish, and that has never been under a yoke. Give it to Eleazar the priest. It is to be taken outside the camp and slaughtered in his presence. He's to take some of the blood on his finger and sprinkle it 7 times toward the front of the tent of meeting, and then watch as the whole thing is burned. It's supposed to burn some cedar wood and hyssop in there, some red wool, scarlet wool, and then gather up the ashes that can then be mixed with water and sprinkled all over everybody for cleansing. And then there are some very specific rules about this, like it has to be done in view of the Holy of Holies, which is a debatable location. The ashes also have to be mixed in with the ashes of the former red heifers. There's been 10 of them total. And this has to be done by an appropriate Kohen, a priest, that basically they've specifically raised since birth to be ritually pure. And once all this is done, it can be used to purify everybody else. Until then, they're not allowed to go up on the Temple Mount and pray on the Temple Mount. Can't have a third temple. So, in order for the prophecy to be fulfilled and Mashiach return and build the third temple, you got to do the thing with the cows. Now, one of the stipulations about the cows is it has to make it to 3 years old without any of these blemishes. So they had 5 candidates that they got from an American farmer that basically gene pooled them. But they started out with 5 of these, and they were supposed to have come of age in October 15th of 2023. I had done a video like a couple months before reporting on this. And then 1 week before that date, this happened. Recently, they've been using this as the reason for this happening. But as of October 15th, 2023, they had eligible candidates. And by the way, I know this doesn't sound like much, but evidently it's incredibly rare that you get a perfect red heifer. Even where I grew up, people will say, oh, that's a red heifer. It's something you're not going to find. So my question has always been, if you've waited that long and there's a chance that anything could go wrong, would you even wait an extra day? Well, it depends on who you ask, I guess. Like I've been saying for a while, it's kind of naive to assume that all grays, and if you're new here, that's when I can't say a certain name, I just say grays. And a lot of people assume that all grays want the same thing, but they should really listen to some lectures by them. It's hard to get a consensus on whether or not dinner was good. And I've heard 5 different opinions about each little aspect of how this ritual is supposed to take place. The Temple Institute, who really wants this to happen, has already made the priestly garments and all of these things that are required for this ritual. And I have heard them confirm that they have children that are viable for this. One part of being impure is if you've ever walked over a grave, then now you're impure. So they literally have a compound dug into bedrock where these children have been raised so they never accidentally walk across somebody's grave. Then they have certain protocols for getting the children to the spot of the ritual and then from there to the Temple Mount without becoming impure. You see this bridge that they've made here? Well, that bridge is made of arches upon arches. So in the event that there was a forgotten grave under that bridge, people walking on it wouldn't become impure. I did a deep dive into this a while back, and I'll just say this is what happens when God's lawyers start litigating the arbitrary rules of Yahweh, which I'll get back to in a minute. Now, they have convinced the entire Christian world that this has to take place on the Mount of Olives. But I've got my secret stash Robbie when I really want to know what's going on. I go and check out his channel, and he confirmed what I read on the Temple Institute's website. The actual burning of the red heifer needs to be done outside the camp, but still has to be in sight of the sanctuary. So everybody in the Christian world I've heard on this says, well, yeah, then it has to be the Mount of Olives. But here's a big clue. The blood must be sprinkled, quote, toward the front of the tent of meeting. Well, the tent of meeting has nothing to do with any of the temples that were ever in Jerusalem. This has to do with the tabernacle way back before all of that. After they got done wandering around, going from war to war with each new city they came across, they finally parked it at Shiloh for 369 years. That was a really durable tent. It lasted almost 400 years. But this was at Shiloh, not Jerusalem. So you want to guess where they have the 5 red heifers? Yeah, at Shiloh. And this is where they say today that the tabernacle sat. So while everybody's debating the logistics of how they're going to pull this off right in the middle of a very busy city and apparently build a bridge from the Mount of Olives over to the Temple Mount without angering all of Islam, well, when Yahweh actually decreed all of these things, he was talking about the tabernacle and not the Temple Mount. And out here, you could fly over and drop napalm on the cow, and nobody's going to notice because it's the middle of nowhere. Like I said, there's no consensus on any of this, but several Robbies agree with what I'm saying here. This also just happens to be right where they decided to house these cows as soon as they showed up there. So that being the case, they could have already done this without anyone knowing. This being the event that sets into motion the 7 years of tribulation, they might keep it under wraps. They're not exactly known for showing their hand. Now, here is something that has blown my mind for a long time, ever since I finally noticed it, is how few Christians have actually put 2 and 2 together here, thanks to CZ. So let's watch a good little gooey just drinking all this up. So he's asking here, are they going to have security and protection to complete this sacred event? Because what they believe about this is the third temple means the return of Jesus. And they actually think CZ is a thing instead of 2 totally different religions. So the Robbie answers, well, they're in Shiloh, which is surrounded by Arabs. And he says, I've gone on and spoke to the security people. And you know the real serious security guys because they're always smiling. Then he decides to drop a real serious joke here. What's the difference between a red heifer and a gray? Well, the Arabs will off either one. They don't care. So sure, they're going to have security. For us, it's just a way of life. We always have to have our security. It's our daily oxygen because they just always want to off us. Meanwhile, they're literally G-siding the people that they say they're trying to protect themselves from. But he goes on to thoroughly guilt trip the good gooey here, and then completely takes the wind out of his sails when he asks about the third temple and the second coming of Jesus.
I don't mind when people say, oh, it'll signal the coming of Jesus. I'm like, fantastic. Let's see. Let's just, I'm just required to make it happen. And if Jesus shows up, well, we'll deal with that then. And if he doesn't, well, we'll deal with that then. And
then launches into an attack against Christians, saying that Christians are attacking him. Yeah, there are a lot of Christians that are amping up the 8 Fred for Yeezy, just straight up Semitophobia. And then goes on to reference one video, the most popular of which got 1 million views, I think, and blah, blah, blah. You can read along for a second if you want. But the amazing thing here is they will straight up tell you, no, this has absolutely nothing to do with Jesus or Christianity. This is our thing. That's your thing. At least he's being honest about it, where the CZ movement has been convincing Christians for the last 100 years that there is such a thing as CZ. They're 2 totally separate things. Okay, so let's wrap up what the status of the red cows is, and then I'll throw in my 2 cents. It really depends on who you ask, and everybody's got insider info. But Robbie Ariel, who leads the Temple Institute, says, at this moment, it is unclear whether we have in our possession a red heifer that is verifiably kosher. So now we don't know. We had 5, but now we're not sure. We can't go out there and look at them. Robbie Ariel further explained that the 5 red heifers brought from America, which were thought to be viable, began to grow white hairs. Because of this, new calves must be bred, raised, and examined before purification rites can proceed. this is a major development, and it could mean a delay of several years. So let's review here. On October 15th, 2023, these cows came of age. And just 1 month before that, it was verified that they were still unblemished and acceptable. But it was decided that they'd wait just a little bit longer. And it was decided that they were going to bank everything on these 5 and not go ahead and start breeding more, apparently. Now, we're talking about the kind of people who invent things like hedge funds, but they decided they'd put all their eggs in one basket and just bank everything on these 5. And then when they came of age, they decided not to do anything. And what do you know? After waiting another 2 years, well, now they're blemished, so we have to start all over again. I'm not buying that. I think if they really wanted this thing to be done, then it'd be done. And I think it would have been done out here in the middle of nowhere where they didn't have to worry about other people, because when Numbers was written, when this decree came down from Yahweh, this was the location. This was before the time of Jerusalem. But once again, this goes back to not all grays wanting the same thing. You do know that over half of the country is protesting against the regime that's in place right now. And the Lionese are specifically a secular organization. They don't care about any of the religion part of it. They just want the land. But now they're officially saying, well, we don't even know if we have eligible cows anymore. I asked Mordecai to go check them last week and hadn't heard back from them. So make what you will of that. If it were me and this is truly what I believed and that this would bring about the kingdom of God on earth, I wouldn't have wasted an extra day. But this is what truly amazes me out of all of this, is how they've got so many Christians cheering this on. Because to the Greys, it's very clear that the Mashiach will be the builder of the third temple. But according to Christians and the book of Revelation, then the person that sits on the throne of the third temple is the Antichrist. So the Savior to some is the Antichrist to others, but we're all talking about the same thing here. To you guys that have been around here for years, you already know what I think about this. If you're new, we'll buckle up before we get into all that. I'm not going to do it in this video. So anyway, I guess the latest word on the street is they had their chance, they waited for 2 years, and now they're all blemished, so they have to start all over from scratch. And all I can do is speculate whether or not that's true and whether or not they went ahead and did it in secret. So feel free to make up your own mind about that one. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll catch you on the next one. Static out.